Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of Everything Kratom, the podcast about anything and everything Kratom. Great to have you with us on this Friday morning. Wow, end of the week. Woo, made it. Getting warm outside, it's getting sunny. I love it. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about how fentanyl has been covered recently as this horrible thing that is driving the opioid epidemic today, or at least not driving the opioid epidemic today. I mean more, sorry, that's not right. I think that it's more that it's causing the most overdose deaths and is pretty much affiliated with the result of the opioid epidemic today. Like it is present, ever present, wherever someone is, losing their life to this thing. And so, but again, not the cause of the opioid epidemic. And I've already talked a lot about how some people really use fentanyl for, its actual intended purpose, and that it's crucial to them managing their pain. And I've learned a lot about that because I kind of came in guns a-blazing when I was starting this podcast, thinking that it was just all bad, and I kind of got put in my place. A lot of people need this stuff. So first off, just definitely have to say that. That having been said, this stuff scares the living daylights out of me, and the fact that it's everywhere, the fact that it's being put in everything, and the fact that there are even more drugs and more things that are even more powerful being put in everything than fentanyl is also really amazing and scary. And basically, bringing all this back to Kratom, it seems to me that it's like more likely now than it would have been when I started this podcast, although I don't know if that's true. More likely now that people would understand that Kratom is not a real big problem. And this is the argument I kind of want to make today. So here we go. I think that a year ago or 2 years ago, when I was first doing this podcast, or just starting it or thinking about doing it, I saw a lot of criticism for Kratom that I see today. But the difference is that now we've had a few years of like new record-breaking numbers of overdose deaths, and the fact that fentanyl is both like becoming part of the, I guess, I don't know if politicized is the right word, but becoming part of the political arguments that you might see in like high-level national debates when it comes to, where is the fentanyl coming from and who is responsible for the opioid epidemic as it goes on, moves forward. Does it have to do with the border and where it's coming from? Does it have to do with China? Does it have to do with internal policies, external countries, all that stuff? I'm not wading into that. But what I am saying is that there's a lot more talk now about it than there was a few years ago. And I think that as a result of that, there's been a lot more coverage, at least in my opinion, recently in national news with the opioid epidemic, because you have a lot more people losing their life to overdoses. And that, combined with the pandemic, resulted in the past few years like being record-breaking numbers, and they're just continuing to go up, right? So we've had a few years of all that happening, and now I think that fentanyl is like a household word. Like everybody knows that it exists, right? Which is new. Not everyone knew about this when it first came out, right? And so everyone knows that it's there. And everyone knows that it's present in most of a majority of these deaths. It's like over 70,000. And we're not talking about like, a million overdose deaths or anything, but we're talking about like 70, 80, 100, 1,000 overdose deaths. So it's like, it's responsible for most of them, or not, I won't say primarily, but it's present in most of them. Now you look at Kratom, and if everybody knows that fentanyl is present in most of these overdose deaths that we're recording right now, and then you look at Kratom when it pops up and someone says we need to ban Kratom because it's killing everyone everywhere, and it's like present in 130 cases or 140 cases, and like also fentanyl is in most of them, and heroin and cocaine and et cetera, then I think that anybody who looks at that and who's actively thinking about the opioid crisis and the overdose crisis, maybe I should just say the overdose crisis, because it's not just opioids, anybody who's looking at the overdose crisis that we're dealing with right now would think, there's a hierarchy here, Like, I'm not saying that anyone would just necessarily look at those numbers and dismiss them. Obviously not. But I would think that people would look at those numbers, hear the news report, and think to themselves, fentanyl is the thing that, is the thing that I should be thinking about. Like this other thing is, I don't know, do the math. Like it's so small. Even if kratom was responsible for like 100 deaths, which it's not, it's definitely not. You have to work your keister off just to even find one good argument for one good case where kratom was the primary thing that took someone's life. And really, I've only found like one case ever from 20 or 30 years ago where there was kratom and citalopram, and that was it, after 2 post-toxicology reports. So I will share that with people. And it does make me think about that combination is a very bad idea. That all aside, that's one case. Even if there was 100 cases, which there's not, I have a good way of showing this to do the math. Or not really to do the math, but this is sad, so I'm sorry, but this is the best way I can think of it. Let's say there's an earthquake somewhere and it kills 100 people. That's a tragedy. And it has happened recently in real life, more than 100. So it happens and it's horrible. And you can't really compare a tragedy to another one in some ways. But if a nuclear bomb is dropped on Hiroshima and 100,000 people die, which also happened, or Nagasaki, or, looking more long term, look at all the bombs that were dropped in Laos. Anyway, getting off track here. If something like that happens, then it's like, I'm sorry, there's a hierarchy. Like, there's something that is a little more horrific in nature. Like, it just is. It's not that the earthquake isn't something to think about, because it is. And that's why I still think about this one case I saw in this old study looking at all these cases from Colorado over the past 30 years. And that's why I still think about it, because even one case that kratom is involved in bothers me. And even the cases today where, a lot of people who are pro-kratom are bashing families who are trying to sue when their loved ones pass away. I don't like the bashing at all, and I don't think that it's valid, and I don't blame the family members for wanting to take this route. And it bothers me that kratom's there. More specifically, there was a recent case where there was kratom, and then there was 2 different prescriptions, and I think it was like an antihistamine and an antidepressant. Celexa actually was one, citalopram was one of the 2. So that case bothers me, and I'm very wary of kratom being combined with those things, and I did a whole episode on that as well. So, it's like, for whom the bell tolls, Hemingway, send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Any man's death diminishes me, for I am a part of humankind, So it's like that. I feel a loss in any of these cases. But if we're looking at society as a whole, and when to ban something, or when to focus on something, or when to realize that it's just something that happens when you have a substance in existence and it's going to be present in different places, versus some sort of huge thing happening or systemic issue that could be changed, I think the fentanyl is maybe a little more worthy of the focus there, and that kratom really isn't. I'm not saying ban fentanyl, by the way. Just to be very clear, I'm not saying ban fentanyl so that no one can use it medically. But what I'm saying is, if we're going to be talking about the issues and the crisis we're facing right now in terms of overdoses, let's focus on the Hiroshima and not the earthquake. Although we know that there are earthquakes from time to time. and they're horrible. You know, it's true. But let's focus on the bomb, please. Anyway, that's kind of what I'm getting at. All of that. First off, sorry, those are tough analogies or images to use. All of that assumes that there's 100 people who have passed away from kratom, which is not true. And I think that maybe one day, if there can be some proof that shows that kratom actually causes death, then the 130 cases or whatever it is that kratom is present in where someone has died, those now become potential kratom caused deaths in my mind. If you can prove that kratom can cause death, then if it's present somewhere, then it could be a kratom caused death. So far, no one's proved that. Fentanyl, on the other hand, people have proven that it can cause death. And that is why it's present in 70,000 of these cases. So that, I think, is getting to the heart of the matter. And that's what I wanted to kind of rant about today. So there you have it. Sorry for the tough images. Sorry for the symbolism. Sorry for all that. I know that that's not easy stuff to talk about or to hear sometimes. So my apologies. Okay, everyone, we're going to end it there. We will be back on Monday. And I hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy the sunshine. Stay safe out there. All right, talk to you then. Bye-bye.